Every time you scroll through Instagram, your brain's ventral striatum lights up like a Christmas tree. That's the same reward center that activates when you gamble or take drugs. But here's the kicker. It's making you miserable about your money. Today, we're exploring the neuroscience behind why you feel financially inadequate even when you're not, and how social media has hacked your brain's ancient comparison mechanisms. Stick around to discover the 3 psychological techniques that can rewire your financial self-perception and stop the anxiety for good. The perception gap. Why you think everyone's richer than you. What if I told you that most Americans think 10% of households earn over $1 million annually when the real number is less than 0.5%? That's not just a small misperception. It's a massive gap between what we think is happening financially around us and what's actually true. This wealth perception gap is bigger than you might realize. According to research from the Economic Policy Institute, the average American believes that the top 1% owns about 30% of the nation's wealth, when in reality, that number is closer to 40%. We're consistently underestimating how concentrated wealth truly is while simultaneously overestimating how many rich people are around us. But why does this matter? Because this warped perception is probably making you feel worse about your own financial situation right now. When you think everyone around you is doing better, suddenly your perfectly adequate salary feels like you're falling behind. Let's look at some eye-opening numbers. A recent survey by YouGov found that 56% of Americans believe they're middle class regardless of their actual income. Even more surprisingly, 27% of people making over $200,000 a year still identify as middle class, not wealthy. We've collectively lost track of what average actually looks like. This creates a bizarre situation where almost everyone feels like they're financially struggling compared to their peers. You might be earning more than 70% of Americans, but if you're constantly exposed to the lifestyles of the top 5%, you'll still feel like you're falling behind. It's like everyone's playing a game where the goalposts keep moving. The perception problem gets even worse when we look at what people think they need to be financially comfortable. Study after study shows that regardless of income level, people consistently say they need about 2 to 3 times their current salary to feel financially secure. Someone making $50,000 thinks they need $100,000 to be comfortable, while someone making $100,000 thinks they need $250,000. This just a bit more phenomenon persists all the way up the income ladder. Think about the last time you scrolled through social media and saw a friend's vacation photos or someone's new home purchase. Did you immediately start comparing it to your own situation? Did you wonder how they could afford it when you're still struggling to save for your goals? That's the perception gap in action. You're likely comparing your full financial reality to someone else's carefully curated highlight reel. What's truly fascinating is that this perception gap exists regardless of how much money you actually have. A study in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization found that even millionaires typically feel they need substantially more wealth to be truly satisfied. The researchers found that millionaires with a net worth of $1 to $2 million felt they needed about $3 million to be happy, while those with $10 million wanted closer to $25 million. This constant feeling of not enough isn't just annoying, it has real consequences for your financial and mental health. When you believe everyone else is doing better, you're more likely to make financial decisions based on keeping up, rather than what actually makes sense for your situation. Maybe you stretch your budget for a nicer car, take on more debt for a bigger house, or feel pressured to match the lifestyle you see others displaying. The perception gap also contributes significantly to financial anxiety. A Capital One survey found that 77% of Americans feel anxious about their financial situation, with social comparison being one of the leading causes. This anxiety persists even among people who, by objective standards, are doing quite well. So, why are our perceptions so dramatically out of sync with reality? The explanation lies in how our brains process information and what information we're regularly exposed to. First, we're bombarded with examples of exceptional wealth. Think about the last 5 TV shows you watched. What kind of homes did the characters live in? What kind of lifestyle did they have? Studies show that television consistently portrays characters as having upper middle to upper class lifestyles, even when their jobs wouldn't realistically support such wealth. We're constantly absorbing these inflated standards without even realizing it. Social media compounds this problem in unprecedented ways. The average Instagram feed is essentially a highlight reel of financial wins, new houses, fancy vacations, expensive restaurants, and luxury purchases. What you don't see are the budget spreadsheets, the financial compromises, or the debt that might be financing that lifestyle. Research from the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that social media use is directly linked to increased social comparison and decreased well-being. News coverage further distorts our perception. Headlines about billionaires, luxury real estate, and stock market records are more attention-grabbing than stories about average financial situations. When was the last time you saw a headline about someone with a modest income successfully building an emergency fund? It's not exactly breaking news. There's also something called availability bias at work here. Our brains tend to give more weight to examples that come to mind easily. The $300,000 house in your neighborhood with the luxury cars parked outside makes a stronger impression than the $150,000 houses you drive past every day. Over time, your perception of what's normal shifts toward these standout examples. And here's the kicker. This perception gap isn't random. It's a direct result of how our brains evolved. Our ancestors lived in small groups where accurate social comparison was crucial for survival. Knowing your standing in the tribe helped you navigate social hierarchies and secure resources. But those same mental mechanisms are now exposed to a global economy and billions of people through our screens, creating comparisons that would have been impossible even a generation ago. The psychological term for this is relative deprivation, the feeling that you're worse off compared to others, regardless of your absolute situation. Research shows that relative income, how much you make compared to others, often has a stronger impact on happiness than absolute income, how much you actually make. This explains why someone can double their salary and still feel financially inadequate if their perception of what others have continues to outpace them. Here's what makes this truly fascinating. Americans massively overestimate how many people are wealthy because our brains are wired to notice and remember exceptional examples, not averages. The neuroscience behind this is clear. Novel, unusual, or extreme examples create stronger neural connections and are easier to recall. Meanwhile, the statistically common financial situations around us fade into the background of our awareness. Your brain on comparison. The neuroscience of financial FOMO. When you feel that sting of envy scrolling through your friend's luxury vacation photos, it's not just an emotion. It's actually a complex neurological response happening in specific regions of your brain. That painful twinge is lighting up the same neural pathways that process physical pain. Literally, your brain is treating financial FOMO similar to how it would respond to a physical threat. Let's take a peek inside your skull to see what's really happening when you see someone who seems to be winning at life financially. Two main brain regions are key players in this financial comparison game: your ventral striatum and your insula. Your ventral striatum is essentially your brain's reward center. When you anticipate potential financial rewards or see others enjoying financial success, this region lights up like a Christmas tree. Research shows that the ventral striatum activates proportionally to the size of anticipated gains. The bigger the potential reward, the stronger the activation. Think of it as your brain's way of saying, "Ooh, I want that too." But there's another region working in opposition, your insula. This fascinating little part of your brain processes risk and uncertainty, and it particularly perks up when you're confronted with potential financial losses or when you see yourself falling behind others. The insula is like your internal risk manager, constantly scanning for threats to your financial status. These two brain regions create a neurological tug-of-war every time you make financial comparisons. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI studies have revealed exactly how this works. When participants in studies observe others enjoying financial success, their ventral striatum activates, creating a complex mix of motivation. I could have that too, and distress, but I don't have it yet. Knudsen and Bossert's groundbreaking research revealed that these brain regions actually predict our financial behavior. When your ventral striatum is highly activated by seeing potential rewards, you're more likely to take financial risks to try to achieve similar success. Meanwhile, when your insula lights up strongly in response to potential losses, you become more risk-averse and conservative with your money. What's wild is that these brain mechanisms didn't evolve to help you decide whether to splurge on that thing everyone else seems to have. They developed for completely different purposes thousands of years ago. Our ancestors needed to quickly assess their standing within small tribal groups to determine access to resources and mates. Those who could accurately gauge and improve their social position had better survival odds. The ventral striatum helped early humans navigate social hierarchies by motivating them to pursue status and rewards that would improve their position in the group. Meanwhile, the insula served as an early warning system for potential threats to their status. Together, these regions created a biological GPS for social navigation. The problem? These ancient neural circuits are now being bombarded with financial comparisons they were never designed to handle. Your brain evolved to process comparisons with maybe 30 to 150 people in your immediate tribal group, not thousands of carefully curated Instagram profiles showing only the most aspirational moments of people's financial lives. When you see that college roommate's new Tesla on social media, your ventral striatum doesn't understand that this is just one cherry-picked moment. It processes it as direct evidence about your relative position in the social hierarchy. Simultaneously, your insula flags this as a potential threat to your status, triggering anxiety and stress hormones. What's particularly fascinating is how the insula's role in processing negative emotions related to financial comparisons can actually hinder smart financial decision-making. When your insula is highly activated from seeing yourself as falling behind financially, you experience genuine emotional distress. This activation contributes to feelings of anxiety that can cloud judgment and lead to either financial paralysis or impulsive decisions to catch up. Think about the last time you saw someone posting about their amazing new house or car on social media. That uncomfortable feeling wasn't just envy, it was your insula processing what it perceived as a legitimate threat to your social standing. Your brain was literally treating this financial comparison as a survival issue. This neural activity happens completely outside your conscious awareness. You don't choose to feel bad when you see others succeeding financially. Your brain automatically processes these comparisons through systems that evolved for an entirely different world. And the kicker? These brain regions can't distinguish between realistic comparison targets and completely unrealistic ones. So what does this mean for your everyday financial emotions? When you compare yourself financially to others, your ventral striatum activates with reward signals, creating that yearning feeling for what others have. Simultaneously, your insula processes the negative emotions associated with not measuring up, triggering anxiety and risk aversion. It's a neurological roller coaster that plays out countless times in your brain as you navigate a world full of financial comparisons. The ventral striatum and insula don't just influence how you feel, they directly impact your financial decisions. When your ventral striatum is strongly activated by seeing others' financial success, you might make riskier financial choices in an attempt to achieve similar results. Conversely, when your insula dominates the response, you might become overly cautious with your money, potentially missing valuable opportunities. What's crucial to understand is that this isn't a character flaw or moral failing. It's literally how your brain is wired to function. Financial comparison isn't something you're choosing to do. It's an automatic neurological process that's happening beneath your conscious awareness. Your brain is simply running programming that evolved to help our ancestors survive in a completely different world. In small tribal groups, these comparison mechanisms were actually quite effective. If you saw someone in your tribe with more resources, that information was both relevant and actionable. The number of people you compared yourself to was limited, and the comparisons were generally realistic. Your brain could process this information and use it to improve your own status within the group. But in today's hyper-connected world, these same neural pathways are being completely overwhelmed. Rather than comparing yourself to a few dozen people in your immediate community, you're now comparing yourself to thousands of people around the world, many of whom are only showing their most financially impressive moments. The social media multiplier, how Instagram broke your financial brain. Instagram opens up, and there it is. Your college buddy lounging on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Your high school classmate showing off their third luxury car. Your former coworker announcing they've just purchased their dream vacation home. 10 minutes of scrolling later, and suddenly your decent salary and comfortable apartment feel inadequate. This is no accident. Social media has fundamentally rewired how your financial brain operates, and the effects are more profound than you might realize. That Stone Age brain of yours, the one designed to make simple comparisons with a small tribal group, is now processing hundreds of financial data points every single day. The scale of this comparison explosion is staggering. Consider this. Anthropologically, humans evolved to compare themselves with roughly 20 to 30 people in their immediate social circle. These were real-world comparisons with people whose full lives you witnessed, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But today, the average social media user follows between 200 to 300 accounts, exponentially increasing the number of comparison targets your brain processes daily. What makes this truly problematic isn't just the quantity, but the quality of these comparisons. Social media has created what researchers call highlight reels, carefully curated collections of life's most impressive moments. Nobody's posting about their maxed out credit cards or the argument they had with their partner about overspending, spending. They're posting vacation photos, new cars, home renovations, and expensive restaurant meals. A study by DeVries and Kuna found that social media use is directly linked to lower self-esteem, particularly because of these upward social comparisons. When you compare your everyday reality, bills, budget constraints, financial worries, against someone else's highlight reel, you're setting yourself up for an impossible comparison. It's like comparing your blooper reel to someone else's Oscar-winning performance. But here's where things get even more sinister. The algorithms are actively working against your financial well-being. Social platforms aren't neutral spaces. They're engineered to maximize engagement. And what drives engagement more effectively than aspiration and envy? Those platforms have figured out that financial content, particularly displays of wealth and luxury, keeps users scrolling, commenting, and coming back for more. Every time you linger on a post showing a luxury vacation or designer purchase, the algorithm takes note. It thinks, this user engages with aspirational financial content. And just like that, your feed transforms into an endless stream of wealth displays, each one driving that little spike of inadequacy deeper into your financial psyche. The technical term for this phenomenon is social media-induced financial anxiety, and it's becoming a recognized factor in financial psychology. As you're bombarded with these curated financial success stories, your brain processes each one as a realistic comparison point rather than the exceptional circumstance it likely represents. What's happening neurologically is fascinating but troubling. Your brain can't distinguish between realistic and unrealistic comparison targets when you're scrolling. To your ancient neural pathways, each of those vacation photos or new home announcements registers as a real status indicator from your social group. It doesn't have the filtering mechanism to recognize that these present exceptional moments rather than everyday realities. Research indicates that social media discourse significantly influences not just your personal financial outlook, but broader market behavior too. Public sentiment expressed on platforms like Twitter can actually impact stock prices and trading volumes. This interconnectedness between social media discussions and financial markets demonstrates just how powerful these platforms have become in shaping our financial reality. The psychological impact is profound. Each time you scroll through Instagram, your brain isn't just passively consuming content, It's actively calculating your position in the social hierarchy. Am I doing better or worse than these people? It constantly asks. The problem is you're comparing your complete financial reality against carefully selected snapshots that represent the absolute peak moments of someone else's financial life. This creates what psychologists call perceived relative deprivation, the feeling that you have less than others, even when objectively, you might be doing just fine. The more time you spend on social media, the stronger this feeling becomes. Studies consistently show that increased social media usage correlates with decreased financial satisfaction, regardless of actual income levels. Even sophisticated investors aren't immune to these effects. Research shows individuals often rely on social media for investment-related information, which can lead to poor investment decisions. This is particularly true for unsophisticated investors who may lack the skills to separate valuable information from noise. When everyone on Twitter is talking about a hot new stock, your brain's comparison centers light up. If everyone else is getting rich on this, I should be too, often leading to impulsive financial decisions. The real tragedy is how this affects your day-to-day financial emotions. That perfectly good salary that once made you feel secure suddenly seems insufficient. The apartment you were proud to afford now feels like a stepping stone to something better. Your reliable car transforms from a practical asset into an embarrassing liability, all because your social media feed is constantly showing you what you don't have rather than helping you appreciate what you do. This constant exposure to curated wealth displays creates what researchers describe as pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle. You begin to feel that your worth isn't just determined by your financial reality, but by how that reality appears to others. So you might find yourself making financial decisions not based on what brings you actual happiness or security, but on what will look impressive when shared online. The impact extends beyond just feelings of inadequacy. It can lead to genuine financial harm through what economists call consumption cascades. As you witness others spending lavishly, your reference point for normal spending shifts upward. This can trigger actual increased spending as you attempt to match the lifestyle standards set by your social media feed, often leading to debt and financial stress. Perhaps most insidious is how social media erodes your ability to feel gratitude for your current financial situation. Research in positive psychology shows that gratitude is one of the strongest predictors of financial well-being. But it's nearly impossible to maintain financial gratitude when you're constantly exposed to images suggesting you don't have enough. This isn't just about envy or keeping up with the Joneses, it's about a fundamental rewiring of your financial perception. Your brain is processing each luxurious Instagram post as a genuine threat to your social standing, not as the carefully filtered exception it actually is. And, over time, this transforms the hedonic treadmill, why more money never feels like enough. Think about the last time you got a raise or a bonus. Remember that initial rush of excitement? That feeling of finally reaching a financial milestone you'd been working toward? Now ask yourself, how long did that feeling actually last before your new income just became your new normal? What I'm about to explain goes much deeper than social comparisons. It's hardwired into your biology. And it explains that frustrating phenomenon where no matter how much your income grows, it never quite feels like enough for very long. This psychological mechanism has a name, the hedonic treadmill. It's the brain's remarkable and sometimes frustrating ability to adapt to changes in your circumstances, both positive and negative, and return to a relatively stable baseline level of happiness. Think of it like a thermostat for your satisfaction that constantly resets, regardless of what financial temperature you reach. The science behind this is pretty mind-blowing. Research shows that we adapt to income increases remarkably quickly, often in just a few months. That promotion you worked so hard for? Your brain's already normalized it. That salary bump that was supposed to solve all your money worries, your satisfaction with it is already fading. Here's where it gets really interesting. Studies have found that lottery winners and people who experience severe accidents often return to roughly the same baseline happiness within just 1 year. Let that sink in. A life-changing windfall or a devastating setback, and within 12 months, most people's happiness levels stabilize remarkably close to where they were before. But why does this happen? It all comes down to your brain's reward system and how it processes novelty. When you first experience a financial gain, like a raise or bonus, your brain releases dopamine, creating that rush of pleasure and satisfaction. But your brain quickly becomes desensitized to this new status quo. What was once exciting becomes ordinary, and your brain starts seeking the next hit of dopamine from something even better. Think about your phone. Remember how exciting it was when you first got it? All those cool features and that sleek design? Fast forward a few months, and it's just your phone. Nothing special. That's hedonic adaptation in action, and it works the same way with your finances. The real problem starts when you combine this adaptation mechanism with our consumer culture and social media environment. As soon as your brain adapts to your current financial situation, you're bombarded with messages about the next thing you need to be happy. The car you just bought? Already there's a newer model. The house you saved years for? Your feed is showing you even more impressive homes. This creates what psychologists call a satisfaction gap. We've out the perpetual distance between what you have and what you think would make you truly happy. And that gap never closes because your targets keep moving. Even more fascinating is the research showing that, beyond meeting your basic needs, additional income produces diminishing returns in happiness. Once you've covered necessities like food, housing, healthcare, and some discretionary spending, each additional dollar contributes less and less to your overall satisfaction. Yet, we continue chasing higher incomes as if they'll deliver proportionally higher happiness, a mathematical relationship that simply doesn't exist. You've probably experienced this firsthand. Maybe you remember a time when you were earning much less, but felt just as happy, or even happier, than you do now. This isn't your imagination playing tricks. It's the hedonic treadmill in action. The treadmill creates a particularly dangerous trap when it comes to lifestyle inflation. As your income increases, your spending typically expands to fill the available space. That bigger apartment, fancier restaurants, premium subscriptions, suddenly they're not luxuries, but necessities. Before you know it, you're earning significantly more, but feeling no more financially secure than before. What's even more troubling is how this affects your long-term financial health. When you're constantly chasing the next dopamine hit from consumption rather than building wealth, you sacrifice future security for momentary satisfaction that quickly fades. The hedonic treadmill essentially tricks you into making poor financial decisions by promising a happiness boost that never materializes, at least not for long. Let's put this in perspective with a common scenario. Imagine you're earning $60,000 a year, and if you could just make $80,000, you'd feel financially comfortable. Fast forward, you've achieved that goal. But after a few months, your brain has adapted, and now you're convinced that $100,000 is the real threshold for financial peace. This pattern continues indefinitely, with the target always moving just out of reach. This isn't just theoretical, it's happening in your brain on a neurochemical level. Your ventral striatum, remember that reward center we talked about earlier, quickly habituates to new financial circumstances. What once triggered a strong dopamine response becomes the new baseline, requiring an even stronger stimulus to achieve the same feeling. You can see this plainly in the way people talk about their financial goals. Ask someone earning $50,000 what would make them financially comfortable, and they'll often say around $100,000. But ask someone already making $100,000 and they'll typically say $250,000. The goalposts aren't just moving, they're accelerating away from you. This mechanism explains why even significant financial achievements often leave us feeling hollow shortly afterward. That promotion, bonus, or investment win delivers a brief happiness spike before your brain's adaptation mechanisms kick in and normalize your new situation. So how does this connect to social media and the comparison trap we discussed earlier? It's a perfect storm. Social media constantly exposes you to people who appear to be further along financially than you are, triggering dissatisfaction. Then the hedonic treadmill ensures that even when you make progress, the satisfaction is fleeting. It's a 1-2 punch that keeps you financially and emotionally off balance. The treadmill becomes even more insidious when you consider how it interacts with your planning for the future. When setting financial goals, we often fall into what economists call projection bias. The tendency to assume our future selves will value the same things our current selves do. This leads to overestimating how happy certain purchases or financial achievements will make us in the long run. Think about it. Have you ever achieved a financial goal only to immediately start thinking, "What's next?" That's not a character flaw. It's your brain's adaptation system working exactly as designed. The problem isn't the system itself, which evolved for good reasons, but rather applying this ancient adaptation mechanism to modern financial circumstances. Upward versus downward, the psychology of who you compare to. While our brain's adaptation system keeps resetting our satisfaction bar with what we already have, there's another fascinating psychological mechanism at work: the direction of our financial gaze. Who you choose to compare yourself with financially triggers entirely different circuits in your brain's reward system, producing emotional responses that can either motivate you forward or send you spiraling into anxiety. Think about scrolling through social media and seeing two different posts. First, you spot a friend lounging on a yacht in Monaco, champagne in hand. Then moments later, you see a GoFundMe for someone who lost their home in a fire. Notice how differently these posts make you feel about your own financial situation? That's not random. It's your brain processing two fundamentally different types of financial comparisons. When psychologists study these comparison patterns, they categorize them as upward comparisons and downward comparisons. Upward comparisons happen when we measure ourselves against those we perceive as better off financially, like that friend on the yacht. Downward comparisons occur when we compare ourselves to those in more challenging financial circumstances, like the person who lost their home. What's remarkable is how differently these two comparison directions affect our emotional state and motivation. When you make upward financial comparisons, your brain's ventral striatum activates in a unique way. This activation can actually be motivating when you see the gap as bridgeable, like when a colleague who started at the same level as you gets promoted, making you think, "I could do that too." But here's where it gets interesting. These upward comparisons don't always lead to motivation. When the gap seems too wide or unattainable, like comparing yourself to a tech billionaire, your brain processes this differently. Instead of motivation, you experience envy or resentment. These feelings aren't character flaws. They're predictable neurological responses to perceived financial hierarchies that seem insurmountable. Research shows this difference is crucial. Upward comparisons can be motivating, particularly when made covertly, without the risk of being judged as inferior. However, effectiveness changes dramatically based on your emotional investment in what's being compared. The more you care about financial status, the more likely upward comparisons will trigger negative emotions rather than motivation. On the flip side, downward comparisons temporarily boost your financial self-esteem. Seeing someone struggling financially often triggers gratitude for what you have. That's why disaster relief fundraisers often make donors feel better about their own circumstances while simultaneously helping others. This emotional boost is genuine, but typically short-lived. What's less obvious is that downward comparisons can also trigger anxiety. When you see someone who's lost everything financially, your brain doesn't just process gratitude, it also registers threat. That could be me someday. This anxiety response explains why some people actively avoid news about economic hardship or financial disasters. Their brains are protecting them from the anxiety that downward comparisons can trigger. What makes this even more fascinating is that we don't choose comparison targets randomly. Research indicates we strategically select who to compare ourselves with based on our emotional needs at that moment. Feeling financially insecure? You'll likely gravitate toward downward comparisons to boost your confidence. Feeling stuck in your financial journey? You'll often seek slightly upward comparisons for motivation. Psychology research distinguishes between two types of comparisons that produce very different emotions. Contrastive comparisons emphasize differences between you and others, which often leads to negative emotions like envy or superiority. Assimilative comparisons focus on similarities and can actually foster motivation and connection. The difference isn't just in who you compare yourself to, but how you frame that comparison in your mind. This distinction explains why comparing yourself to a friend who's slightly ahead financially can either make you feel inadequate or inspired. It depends on whether you're focusing on the differences or the similarities between you. Social media platforms have weaponized this psychological mechanism. Their algorithms have learned that upward comparisons, especially slightly out-of-reach ones, drive more engagement than downward comparisons. Every time you linger on a post showing someone's new luxury purchase or exotic vacation, the algorithm notices and serves you more similar content. These platforms have effectively created comparison machines that continuously expose you to curated financial upward comparisons. They're not showing you the mortgage payments, credit card debt, or financial anxiety behind those luxury purchases, just the highlight reel that triggers your comparison response. What makes this particularly effective is that social media doesn't just show you one comparison target, it shows you hundreds or thousands. This creates a perception that everyone is doing better financially than you are, when in reality, you're seeing a carefully filtered selection designed to maximize engagement through comparison. The financial services industry has caught on too. Notice how investment platforms showcase success stories of people who made extraordinary returns? That's deliberate upward comparison manipulation. They're activating your ventral striatum's response to upward comparison, creating the motivation to invest more with hopes of achieving similar results. Understanding these comparison mechanisms gives you power. Next time you feel that pang of financial inadequacy scrolling through Instagram, recognize it as your brain's natural upward comparison response. You can consciously redirect your attention to more productive comparisons, perhaps to your own financial progress over time rather than to others. You can also strategically use both types of comparisons. When you need motivation, seek out slightly upward financial comparisons with people who've achieved goals similar to yours through means available to you. When you need perspective, thoughtful downward comparisons can remind you of the financial security you already have. The most effective approach combines selective comparison with personal financial benchmarking. Rather than measuring yourself against others, track your own progress toward goals that align with your values. This creates a comparison target that's always relevant and achievable, short-circuiting the endless comparison loop. The inflation illusion: why your brain gets economics wrong. Setting your own financial benchmarks is a powerful strategy, but there's an invisible force that can completely derail your efforts: inflation. And it's not just about the actual numbers, it's about how your brain processes them. Did you know most Americans would rather face a job-destroying recession than inflation, even though unemployment would actually hurt them significantly more? This seemingly irrational preference reveals a fascinating glitch in how our brains perceive economic reality. According to recent research by economist Stephanie Stancheva, inflation is perceived as deeply damaging to financial well-being. People view it not just as an economic phenomenon, but as something that actively exacerbates inequality. What's particularly interesting is how this perception is often influenced by misinformation and the uneven distribution of inflation's impact across different demographic groups. This perception isn't just theoretical. The Primerica Financial Security Monitor found that middle-income households have experienced an average cumulative budget deficit of nearly $2,500 since May 2021 due to rising costs of necessities. This real financial pressure creates the perfect breeding ground for anxiety and harmful comparisons. But here's where things get really interesting. The way we process inflation isn't rational or mathematical. It's driven by what psychologists call attention bias. This cognitive quirk causes us to overweight price increases on frequent purchases while simultaneously underweighting our overall financial situation. Think about it, you probably notice immediately when gas prices jump 50 cents per gallon or when your favorite coffee costs $1 more. These small but frequent purchases command an outsized portion of your attention. Meanwhile, that retirement account that grew by thousands last year barely registers. Your brain simply doesn't give it the same attention. This attention bias distorts your perception of financial reality in profound ways. You might be building wealth steadily through investments or home equity. But if groceries cost more each week, your brain flags this as a crisis. It's as if your financial awareness has a spotlight that only illuminates what's getting more expensive while keeping everything else in the dark. Media coverage dramatically amplifies this problem. News outlets know that inflation stories drive engagement, so they cover price increases relentlessly. Every time you see a headline about record inflation or soaring prices, it reinforces the spotlight effect. Studies have found that consumers often react more strongly to these media messages about inflation than to the actual price changes they experience. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. You notice price increases at the pump and grocery store, see alarming headlines confirming your concerns, and then start to believe your entire financial situation is deteriorating, even when it might not be. What makes inflation particularly insidious is how it creates the perfect conditions for harmful social comparisons. When prices rise, everyone feels like they're falling behind. You start to wonder, how is everyone still affording vacations when I can barely cover my grocery bill? Or, why does everyone seem to be handling these price increases better than me? The reality is, they're probably not. The Primerica study confirms that most middle-income households are experiencing similar budget pressures. But social media still shows people enjoying restaurant meals, shopping sprees, and vacations, creating the illusion that you're uniquely struggling while others are thriving. Inflation anxiety also hooks directly into our comparison mechanisms. When you experience inflation anxiety, you become more likely to engage in harmful financial comparisons. You feel increased pressure to keep up with perceived standards of living exactly when it's becoming harder to do so. This creates a perfect storm for financial stress. Your brain is hardwired to notice price increases, media amplifies these concerns, and social comparison makes you feel uniquely disadvantaged. No wonder inflation feels so threatening. It triggers multiple psychological pressure points simultaneously. What's particularly interesting is how inflation affects different purchases differently in our minds. Price increases on visible, social consumption items like restaurant meals or clothing feel especially threatening because they directly impact our ability to maintain social status. Meanwhile, increases in less visible necessities like utilities might objectively cost you more, but generate less anxiety because they don't trigger the same social comparison mechanisms. There's also a fascinating asymmetry in how we process price changes. Research shows we react much more strongly to price increases than to equivalent decreases. A 10% increase in gas prices feels like a significant loss, while a 10% decrease rarely generates an equivalent feeling of gain. This asymmetry means that even when inflation subsides, the psychological damage often lingers. All of this helps explain why inflation feels so personally threatening, even when, by objective economic measures, other economic conditions like unemployment might hurt us more directly. The brain processes inflation as an immediate, tangible threat happening right now at every purchase, while more abstract economic concepts don't trigger the same alarm bells. So what can you do about this mental distortion? First, recognize that your perception of inflation may be magnified by these psychological mechanisms. Try to step back and assess your complete financial picture, not just the prices that command your attention. Second, be mindful of how media consumption might be amplifying your inflation anxiety. Consider limiting exposure to alarmist economic news that lacks context or perspective. Third, remember that inflation affects nearly everyone. Those social media posts showing friends living their best lives despite rising prices. They're likely feeling the same pinch, but showing only the highlights. Finally, when making financial decisions, try to counteract attention bias by consciously considering your complete financial situation, including assets breaking the cycle, psychological techniques to reset your financial perspective. Counteracting attention bias isn't just about recognizing distortions in your financial perception. There's actually a powerful psychological toolkit that can transform your entire relationship with money. Would you believe that people who practice certain mental exercises report up to 40% less financial anxiety, even when their actual financial situation hasn't changed at all? Your brain's financial operating system can be rewired, and it doesn't require adding a single dollar to your bank account. Breaking free from harmful financial comparisons is genuinely challenging in today's hyper-connected world. Our brains are constantly bombarded with carefully crafted images of financial success, making it feel like we're fighting against our own neural wiring. The good news? Psychological research has identified specific techniques that can interrupt these comparison patterns and reset your financial perspective. Let's start with a technique called the financial autobiography. Think of this as mapping your personal money journey over time. Instead of comparing yourself horizontally against others, you're comparing vertically against your own past self. When was the first time you felt financially independent? What were the major financial milestones you've hit? How have your money values evolved over time? By documenting your financial growth, including both successes and setbacks, you create a powerful narrative that highlights progress rather than positioning. This technique works because it shifts your focus from arbitrary social benchmarks to your actual financial journey. You might discover that while you're not where you thought you'd be by now, you've come much further than you realize. For example, you might recall how thrilled you were when you got your first apartment, even though it was tiny and barely affordable. Or how proud you felt when you made your first retirement contribution, even if it was small. These milestones matter because they're yours. They represent real progress in your unique financial story. Another powerful approach involves values clarification exercises. These techniques help you reconnect your financial decisions to your personal priorities rather than external pressures. The problem with financial comparison is that we often end up chasing someone else's definition of success. Values clarification flips the script by asking, what actually matters to me? This process starts by identifying your core values. Perhaps it's security, freedom, creativity, family, or community impact. Then, you evaluate how your current spending and financial goals align with these values. Are you spending money on things that truly matter to you? Or are you trying to keep up with a lifestyle that doesn't actually reflect your priorities? For instance, you might discover that while you've been stressing about not being able to afford luxury vacations like your coworker, what you truly value is quality time with family, which could be achieved through more modest trips that cause less financial strain. This realignment between your spending and your authentic values creates a kind of financial congruence that dramatically improves satisfaction. Perhaps the most surprising technique in our psychological toolkit is the gratitude inventory practice. Now, I know gratitude exercises might sound a bit cliché, but stay with me. The research on this is genuinely impressive. Studies have shown that regular gratitude practices can reduce financial anxiety by up to 40%, even when financial circumstances remain unchanged. Here's how it works. Set aside time regularly to document specific financial aspects of your life that you're grateful for. This isn't about vague platitudes like, I'm grateful to have a job. Instead, get specific. I'm grateful that I have enough emergency savings to cover 3 months of expenses, which gives me peace of mind. Or, I'm grateful that I was able to pay my bills on time this month without worry. What makes this practice so effective is that it directly counteracts our brain's negativity bias, our tendency to focus on financial threats and shortfalls rather than assets and achievements. By deliberately shifting attention to what's working in your financial life, you're training your brain to notice abundance rather than scarcity. The fourth technique, which I call reference group reset, involves consciously choosing more appropriate financial comparison targets. Since social comparison appears to be hardwired into our brains, rather than trying to eliminate it completely, this approach focuses on making it healthier. Start by auditing your current comparison targets. Who are you measuring yourself against financially? Are these comparisons realistic given your circumstances? Are they helpful or harmful? Then, intentionally select new reference points that make more sense for your situation. This might mean focusing on peers with similar income levels, financial goals, or values, rather than celebrities or top earners in your field. It could also mean seeking out financial role models who are just a few steps ahead of you on a similar path, close enough that their success feels attainable, not defeating. What makes these 4 techniques, financial autobiography, values clarification, gratitude inventory, and reference group reset, so powerful is that they work directly on the psychological mechanisms driving harmful financial comparison. They don't require changing your actual financial situation to be effective. Implementing these practices isn't a one-time fix, though. They're more like mental exercises that strengthen over time. Start by choosing just one technique that resonates with you. Maybe set aside 15 minutes this weekend to begin mapping your financial autobiography, or create a simple 3-item gratitude practice to try each morning. The key is consistency. Just like physical exercise, these mental techniques build strength through repetition. You might not notice dramatic changes immediately, but over weeks and months, you'll likely experience a shift in how you perceive your financial situation. Think of it as gradually installing a better operating system for your financial brain, one that's optimized for your authentic priorities rather than endless social comparison. The goal isn't to eliminate all financial concerns. Those serve an important purpose. Rather, it's to make sure those concerns are calibrated to your actual situation, not distorted by unrealistic comparisons. Some people find it helpful to pair these techniques with a financial reality check, periodically comparing your actual financial metrics against national or local averages to ground your perspective in facts rather than feelings. This doesn't mean obsessing over statistics, but rather using objective benchmarks to complement your subjective psychological work. As you practice these techniques, you might notice that your relationship with money starts to feel different. Financial decisions become less emotionally charged. You find yourself less triggered by friends' vacation photos or colleagues' promotions. Your financial goals start to feel more like personal choices than obligatory benchmarks. Digital detox, rebuilding a healthy relationship with financial media. Those vacation photos and promotion announcements that once triggered financial insecurity, they're just the tip of the digital iceberg. What many people don't realize is that their financial anxiety isn't just coming from within, it's being actively fueled by their social media consumption. The research is clear. Unsophisticated investors who make decisions based on investment-related social media posts consistently underperform the market. Yet millions continue scrolling through financial advice from unvetted online sources, wondering why their bank accounts never seem to match what they're seeing online. Let's face it, reconstructing your relationship with financial media is challenging. You need to stay informed about markets and opportunities, but the same platforms delivering that information are often undermining your financial well-being. It's like trying to eat healthy at a candy store. The good news? Small changes to your digital environment can have outsized effects on your financial satisfaction. Think of your social media consumption as a diet, because it absolutely is one. Just as you carefully choose what foods to put into your body, you need to be intentional about the financial information you consume. Start with a complete audit of your information sources. Which accounts make you feel inadequate about your financial situation? Which finance influencers are selling unrealistic expectations rather than practical advice? These are the empty calories of your information diet. This isn't about burying your head in the sand. It's about being selective. For every financial influencer flaunting a lifestyle that triggers comparison, there are others providing genuine education without the psychological manipulation. The key is recognizing the difference. Your phone already has tools to help with this digital detox. Screen time limits can be set specifically for social media apps that trigger financial anxiety. Content filters can block keywords related to luxury spending or investment schemes that don't align with your strategy. Even something as simple as turning off notifications from financial apps during evenings and weekends can create psychological space for more grounded financial thinking. What's particularly interesting is how scheduled breaks from social media impact your financial well-being. Studies show that taking intentional pauses from platforms like Instagram allows individuals to step back from constant comparisons and reduce feelings of inadequacy. These breaks don't need to be extreme. Even a one-week hiatus can reset your perspective in ways that feel surprisingly similar to getting an actual raise. The relief comes from temporarily escaping the thousands of financial comparison triggers bombarding you monthly. Here's a practical approach. Try implementing Finance-Free Fridays, where you avoid all financial media and conversations for 24 hours. Many people report that this simple practice helps them reconnect with what they truly value about money beyond the comparison trap. When you do return to social media, be intentional about rebuilding your feed with what researchers call positive comparison influences. This means following accounts that inspire rather than trigger feelings of inadequacy. The research indicates that individuals who curate their social media feeds to include positive influences report higher levels of life satisfaction and lower levels of anxiety related to financial comparisons. What makes a comparison positive rather than harmful? It's one that energizes rather than depletes you. It's the difference between following someone who transparently shares their financial journey, including the setbacks and struggles, versus someone who only posts end results that make their success seem effortless and inevitable. Consider following financial educators who emphasize progress over perfection, accounts that celebrate financial achievements at all levels, not just the extraordinary ones, and voices that promote conscious spending aligned with personal values rather than status consumption. Remember that social media has fundamentally changed how market information flows. Platforms like Twitter have become popular forums for exchanging opinions about financial securities since 2006, creating both opportunities and risks. Studies show that social media activity and retail investment flows can actually cultivate price bubbles in markets, while it's often professional investors who correct these social media-driven distortions. This isn't just about feeling better, it's about making better financial decisions. The research shows that it's primarily unsophisticated individual investors who rely heavily on investment-related internet postings when making decisions. Unfortunately, this approach doesn't help them identify traders with superior skills or improve their returns. In fact, it often leads to buying at market peaks and selling at lows, exactly the opposite of successful investing. For specific investments you're considering, try implementing a cooling off period where you research beyond social media before making decisions. Wait 48 hours after seeing an investment promoted online before taking action. During that time, seek information from established financial publications, independent research, or financial professionals not incentivized to sell you specific products. Digital detox interventions, which involve reducing or eliminating social media use, have been consistently linked to improved well-being and reduced financial anxiety. This happens because you're less exposed to unrealistic financial benchmarks that your brain unconsciously adopts as normal. Without these distorted references, your perspective naturally rebalances toward more realistic comparisons. Start small. Try a 30-minute daily period without any digital devices, especially first thing in the morning. This creates space for your brain to set its own agenda, rather than immediately responding to external financial triggers. Many people find that these brief daily detox periods increase their financial satisfaction more effectively than elaborate budgeting exercises. Notice how your emotional relationship with money changes during these digital breaks. Pay attention to whether financial decisions feel less pressured and more aligned with your actual goals, rather than socially imposed benchmarks. This awareness itself becomes a powerful tool for recognizing when social media is negatively influencing your financial mindset. The benefits of these changes extend beyond just feeling better. As your brain gets accustomed to fewer comparison triggers, you'll likely notice improved decision-making across your financial life. Purchasing decisions become more deliberate, investment choices less reactive, and your overall financial plan more stable. Rather than riding the emotional roller coaster of social comparison, you gain perspective that allows for more consistent progress. 3 mental exercises to reset your financial brain today. Beyond digital detox, what if you could actually rewire your brain's financial comparison circuit in just 10 minutes? While reducing social media exposure helps create space for better financial thinking, you still need tools to fill that space with healthier perspectives. Let me share 3 simple mental exercises that aren't just feel-good activities. They target the exact neural pathways that trigger financial comparison anxiety and systematically rewire them for greater contentment. Now, I know what you're thinking. Another set of exercises that probably won't work. But here's the thing. These techniques have been specifically designed by financial psychologists to address the comparison mechanisms we've been discussing. Fair warning, though, they might feel uncomfortable at first. That's actually a good sign. It means you're challenging those deeply ingrained comparison habits that have been running on autopilot. Let's start with the first exercise, the 100 Lives visualization. This powerful mental exercise helps recalibrate your perception of where you actually stand financially compared to others. Here's how it works. Set aside 10 minutes in a quiet space. Close your eyes and imagine 100 random Americans standing in a room. Now visualize their actual financial situations, not what you see on Instagram. Remember that in reality, about 12% of Americans live below the poverty line. Another 30% are living paycheck to paycheck. About 45% are financially stable but not wealthy. Maybe 10% are truly affluent, and only a tiny fraction have the kind of wealth regularly displayed on social media. As you mentally walk through this room of 100 people, place yourself among them. This exercise helps you contextualize your own financial status and see that those luxurious lifestyles flooding your feed represent just a tiny sliver of reality. Try this exercise whenever you feel that pang of financial inadequacy. Financial psychologists recommend practicing it at least once a week, especially after scrolling through social media. The visualization helps your brain develop a more accurate statistical understanding of financial distribution, making you less vulnerable to the skewed perception that everyone else is doing better. The second mental exercise is what I call financial time travel. This practice helps you escape the comparison trap by changing your reference point entirely. Instead of comparing yourself to contemporary benchmarks, you'll evaluate your situation against historical standards. Here's how to do it. Take 10 minutes to research what your current standard of living would equate to in different time periods. For example, consider that just 100 years ago, indoor plumbing was a luxury. Air conditioning barely existed, and medical care was primitive by today's standards. Even someone with modest means today has access to technologies, healthcare, and opportunities that the wealthiest couldn't imagine a century ago. Then, write down 3 specific aspects of your financial life that would have been considered luxurious or impossible in previous generations. Maybe it's the ability to order food delivery with a tap on your phone, access to global entertainment, or the medical treatments available to you. This exercise shifts your perspective from "I don't have enough compared to others" to "I have resources that were unimaginable to most humans throughout history." Try this exercise monthly, researching different historical periods each time. The historical contrast helps deactivate the contemporary comparison circuits in your brain and creates a genuine sense of appreciation for your current circumstances. The third exercise, and this might be the most powerful, is the enough inventory. This practice directly confronts our tendency to constantly move the goalposts of what constitutes enough in our financial lives. Here's the process. Create a document with different life categories: income, housing, transportation, entertainment, travel, savings, etc. For each category, define what enough genuinely means for you. Not what social media suggests, not what your neighbor has, but what would truly satisfy your needs and values. For example, under housing, you might write, a safe, comfortable 2-bedroom home in a neighborhood with good schools and a reasonable commute. Under income, enough to cover my essential expenses, save 15% for retirement, take 2 vacations annually, and have a $300 monthly fun budget. The key is being specific and honest. When you define enough, you create a psychological anchor point that helps your brain recognize when you've actually reached a satisfying level. Without this definition, you're vulnerable to the endless upward comparison that drives financial anxiety. Review and refine your enough inventory quarterly. As your life circumstances change, your definition of enough might evolve, and that's perfectly fine. What matters is that you are consciously setting the benchmark, not external comparisons. What makes these exercises so effective is that they don't just make you temporarily feel better, they actually retrain your brain's comparison mechanisms. Each time you practice these exercises, you're creating new neural pathways that process financial information differently. The brain's neuroplasticity means that with consistent practice, these healthier thought patterns become your default. Try implementing all 3 exercises over the next month. But if that feels overwhelming, start with just 1. Many people find the 100 Lives visualization to be the most immediately impactful, so that's a great place to begin. The key is consistency. Just like physical exercise, these mental workouts build strength over time. While these practices may seem simple on the surface, they target sophisticated psychological mechanisms. The 100 Lives exercise gives your brain statistical context that counters the sampling bias from social media. Financial time travel leverages temporal comparison to escape the trap of contemporary benchmarks. And the enough inventory directly addresses the goalpost shifting tendency that keeps us perpetually dissatisfied. When practiced regularly, these exercises don't just provide momentary relief, they fundamentally alter how your brain processes financial information. People who use these techniques consistently report significant decreases in comparison-based anxiety and greater satisfaction with their financial circumstances, beyond even without any actual redefining financial success on your own terms. While changing how your brain processes financial comparisons is powerful, there's a more fundamental question we haven't addressed. What exactly are you chasing? The financial industry has spent billions convincing you that success looks like a specific number in your bank account. But what if the entire equation is backward? Here's something fascinating. Research consistently shows that people earning modest incomes sometimes report greater financial satisfaction than those making twice as much. This reality challenges everything we're taught about money and happiness. So what's their secret? The answer lies in something called financial autonomy. When you have genuine control over your financial decisions, regardless of the dollar amount, you experience significantly higher levels of well-being and dramatically lower levels of stress. This isn't just feel-good theory. It's backed by substantial research showing that people who prioritize financial autonomy consistently report greater life satisfaction. Think about it. Which person would you rather be? Someone making $150,000 but trapped in a job they hate with golden handcuffs and massive financial obligations? Or someone making $70,000 doing work they find meaningful, with the freedom to make choices aligned? The financial industry wants you to automatically choose the first option, but the happiness research suggests the second person likely enjoys greater financial peace. The challenge, of course, is defining success internally when external benchmarks constantly bombard us. Every advertisement, social media post, and casual conversation with coworkers reinforces conventional metrics: salary, house size, car model, vacation destinations. These external yardsticks are so pervasive that reimagining financial success requires conscious effort and intentional practice. But what exactly does this alternative definition of success look like? Let me share what the research reveals. One of the strongest predictors of financial satisfaction isn't income level, it's alignment between how you spend money and your personal values. When your spending reflects what truly matters to you, satisfaction skyrockets. Consider 2 people with identical incomes. One spends reluctantly on status symbols to keep up appearances, while the other deliberately allocates resources to experiences and causes that bring them joy. The research consistently shows the second person reports significantly higher levels of happiness and contentment. This extends to goal setting too. Studies show that intrinsic financial goals, those focused on personal growth and fulfillment, correlate with substantially greater well-being compared to extrinsic goals like wealth accumulation and status. Setting financial targets based on your authentic priorities rather than societal expectations creates lasting satisfaction rather than temporary relief. Take Maya, for example. She left a high-paying corporate job that required constant travel to start a small local business. Her income dropped by 35%, but her financial satisfaction increased dramatically. Why? Because her new work schedule allowed her to coach her daughter's soccer team and have dinner with her family most nights, priorities that aligned with her core values of connection and presence. Or consider James, who deliberately chose to work 4 days a week instead of 5, accepting a 20% pay cut. This decision allowed him to pursue a passion project, creating community gardens in underserved neighborhoods. His bank account might show less money, but his life satisfaction measurements reveal a richer existence. These aren't isolated examples. Alternative definitions of financial success can include personal milestones, like achieving better work-life balance or contributing to community well-being, rather than focusing solely on income levels. This broader perspective allows many people to find fulfillment beyond traditional financial metrics. Now, I'm not suggesting money doesn't matter, it absolutely does. But the research indicates that financial literacy, effective debt management, and supportive financial networks often predict satisfaction better than raw income numbers. People who engage in proactive financial planning and seek guidance from financial professionals consistently report higher satisfaction levels regardless of their income bracket. This explains why financial education is in such high demand, particularly among younger generations. A recent study shows that 67% of millennials and 64% of Gen Z workers believe their employers should offer financial education. They instinctively understand that financial success isn't just about earning more, it's about managing what you have effectively and aligning it with your values. Let's make this practical. How can you begin redefining financial success on your own terms? Start by asking yourself, what money actually enables in your life that matters to you? Is it security, freedom to pursue interests, ability to help others, time with family? Once you identify these core values, you can evaluate financial decisions based on whether they move you toward or away from these priorities. Next, audit your spending patterns against your stated values. Many of us would be shocked to discover the gap between what we say matters to us and where our money actually goes. This isn't about judgment, it's about alignment. When your spending matches your values, financial satisfaction naturally increases. Consider creating personal financial metrics that reflect your authentic priorities. Instead of focusing solely on income growth, you might track metrics like percentage of income supporting causes I care about, number of hours spent with loved ones versus working, or reduction in financial stress, as measured by improvements in sleep quality or reduced anxiety. Some people find it helpful to write a personal definition of enough, establishing clear boundaries around what constitutes financial satisfaction rather than pursuing endless growth. This simple exercise can dramatically reduce the power of harmful comparisons and create genuine contentment with what you have. The financial services industry has a vested interest in keeping you perpetually dissatisfied with your current position. After all, dissatisfaction drives transactions, and transactions generate profits. By defining success on your own terms, you reclaim power from an industry designed to keep you chasing the next milestone. This approach requires ongoing vigilance. External metrics are incredibly sticky, and we naturally revert to society's definition of success when we're not paying attention. The practice of redefining financial success isn't a one-time exercise, but a continuous recommitment to your authentic values. The most powerful aspect of this shift is how it fundamentally changes your relationship with money. Rather than viewing finances as a scoreboard for comparison with others, you begin seeing money as a tool for creating the life that matters most to you. This perspective transforms financial decisions from anxiety-producing comparisons into empowering choices aligned with your unique priorities. What I haven't mentioned yet is that financial stress deeply impacts our mental well-being too. Studies show that 46% of people dealing with debt also struggle with mental health challenges. This connection between our bank accounts and our minds is powerful, And it's why addressing financial comparison isn't just about money, it's about reclaiming your happiness. Throughout this video, we've explored how our brains process comparisons and how social media amplifies these tendencies. But remember, you can retrain these ancient neural circuits for today's world. One simple strategy you can try today is the 30-day rule for non-essential purchases. When tempted to buy something you don't need, especially after seeing it on social media, wait 30 days before deciding. This creates space between impulse and action, helping you separate genuine needs from comparison-driven wants. Start noticing when financial comparison triggers appear in your daily life and consciously apply one technique we've discussed. Your financial satisfaction and your happiness depend more on your perspective